a doorbell camera that wasn't supposed to be recording. So what else can they tap into? And how can something as simple as selling your car put you at risk? Former US Defense Intelligence operative Dr. Dennis Desmond is my next guest. Dr. Dennis Desmond, great to talk to you. Thanks for being on the Karl Stefanovic show. I heard you on the radio the other day, and I just think you're a fascinating story, but also you have some deeply disturbing things that I think our audience needs to know. First up, you're a darknet intelligence expert. Just give us a small brief on where you've worked before and how you ended up on the Sunshine Coast.
Sure. So I did about 23 years in the U.S. Army as a counterintelligence special agent, split between active duty and reserve. I was recruited into the FBI as a special agent because I'd had about 15 years of Russian language training and studies in the Russian language and politics, history, the works. And so ended up on the FBI National Computer Crime Squad targeting Eastern European hackers, which was a lot of fun.
Wow.
From there, I went into Defense Intelligence Agency, became a senior intelligence officer, supporting clandestine collection, human officers, aka spies, and then ended up at Special Operations Command doing the same thing with the special mission units. I was asked if I'd like to get my PhD in Australia and teach, and I said absolutely. So my wife and I also, she's a senior intelligence officer. We both retired, came to Australia, and we settled in this beautiful Sunshine Coast region and got my PhD in cryptocurrency money laundering disruptions. So I kind of focused on North Korea quite a bit on their cryptocurrency money laundering efforts. And
Wow.
I teach a bunch of different topics, and now I'm working as a chief technology officer in the private industry and teaching, working for
Well,
Raven.
I think you have enough qualifications to be on the show. Seems to me I just don't know which area to specialize in. But look, we'll start with this cybersecurity stuff because I have a feeling I'm going to have you back a bunch of times across
Okay.
all those things. As long as there aren't too many people that you're looking at on the Sunshine Coast. You know, I've got my place in Noosa up there. I don't want you
Good for you.
spying
Good
on
for
me
you.
over
No, no,
Christmas.
no.
Okay, so like I said, I heard you on the radio, and I was a little disturbed. I guess we start with what are the things in our immediate environment that we should be aware of collecting data on us?
So I kind of separate it into two areas. Any activity that you engage in generates useful data. So you go shopping, you buy something, you surf online, you engage with a toll on, a toll collector, you travel, you use your cell phone. Those activities all generate really useful data that companies want to buy. Then there's the passive collection. Just by merely being someplace, you're being collected upon. It could be an automated license plate reader. It could be a flock surveillance camera. It could be a traffic camera. It could be a security camera. Just by mere presence, you're generating information or data about where you are, what you're doing, things like that. All that information is aggregated, collected, then resolved to a specific individual, which is you. Because remember, we're talking about thousands of sensors that you're going to run across every day, including your vehicle, your acoustic and camera in-car collection is generating information. All of that is transmitted usually to a very specific company who then packages it, aggregates it with one of the major aggregators, and then that's resold.
I thought that was illegal.
It's not. Data collection is a huge industry in the world. I mean, we're talking $1 trillion industry. And depending on which country, it is done with permission, with consent, implied consent often, by virtue of the fact like you use a loyalty card. You are giving a grocery store the authorization to collect your purchase data. From that purchase data, I can infer the size of your family, how much you earn, your preferences, your shopping habits, when you shop, what time of day you shop, whether or not you have pets, how old your children are. All of that data is really important to an advertiser or to a grocery store for targeted marketing and for other purposes as well.
So whenever I speak about any kind of product around my phone, is that why within seconds someone's advertising for something up on my phone, or is that just a coincidence?
There are some connections. Typically, remember,
Get out of town. I knew it.
if you're running Alexa, if you're running Siri, if you're running any of these type of smart agent devices, what are called Internet of Things devices in your home, or your phone is on, they are constantly listening for prompts, listening for triggers, and they do the collection occasionally. Now, there has been some assertions that there are direct connections between, like, your social media platform on Meta, Facebook, targeted advertising. That generally is more aligned with your surfing habits. If you're online, they use what are called persistent cookies and transparent GIS or GIFs pixels that track all of your activities, plus any website you visit. It's the browser you're using, how often you use it, where else you've been, what you do with that browser, how the browser's configured, and of course, down to the device level. All of that information is collected and aggregated in addition to each website using, Google Analytics or JavaScript to collect data about you specifically and your habits and activities, including other cookies that have been deposited. So
Wow.
again, any data that you generate is really, really valuable and is collected and aggregated and then resold.
I suppose we don't really think about it that actively during the course of any day, right? And you know that some of the data is going to one place, but you don't think it's being aggregated by someone out there. Who's doing the aggregation? Who's making money off of it?
There's companies like Dun& and Bradstreet, which became Ilion, which got purchased by Experian and Equifax, LexisNexis, TransUnion, Axiom, InfoTrack. These are major data aggregators. Every time you have a utility bill, for instance, they collect the utility data. Your electric company, your water company, your sewage, all that information is collected. That then is resold to these aggregators. And then you also have them divided up into different sectors. So you've got finance and banking, you've got taxes, you've got just regular behavioral data, purchase data. LMG is one of the largest aggregators in Australia. Again, aggregation of all this disparate data sets. Then they do what's called identity resolution or identity norming, data normalization, and they bring it together and say, this is Karl. We have everything on Karl that we need from all these different thousands of different data
Oh,
sources.
God. I suppose, again, if I'm not worried about it, then, it's not going to cause me any kind of harm, but it does annoy me. It does make me worried how many different people, how many sets of different people have different sets of my data out there. And the fact that I don't really have control over it once I've done something in everyday life.
Now, Australia is making some headway with the consumer data rights. They're moving toward allowing us to control our data. I think if you're going to be upset, it may not be about the privacy piece. What I would be upset about is that I'm generating data that somebody else is profiting from.
Right.
Uh, I should be able to basically own my own data and have control over who sees it, who gains access to it, and what they do with it. The
What's it
data,
worth?
a lot. I mean, if you look, one of the major groups like Gartner Group, I mean, it's basically more valuable than oil or gold when we're talking
Wow.
these data packets because it's freely available. And, again, depending on how it's used, you may have seen the articles about Clearview AI collecting Australian images, web scraping off social media, and then harvesting all those images and then keeping it in a massive database. Um, from a law enforcement security perspective, it's a gold mine. I love that stuff. If I were doing an investigation, I don't have to travel to all these different places. I could just go to one stop shop, buy the data or get it shared with me under contract with one of these major data brokers. I don't have to collect on the individual, down to even possibly street cameras. I can see again the individual where they occupy space, in the identity ecosystem. I think from a privacy perspective, it's a matter of convenience. Are you benefiting from targeted advertising. Maybe you're getting a
Mm.
sale price. If you've ever seen the movie Minority Report,
Yeah.
are you benefiting by targeted advertising because you specifically are identified as being a consumer? Okay, there's convenience there, and you're trading off like your loyalty card for benefits. They used to say that if you're not being charged for a product, then you are the product, and
Mm.
that's pretty true.
Yeah.
Basically, they're collecting that data, and that's the exchange for you getting free services.
Yeah, I suppose the convenient aspect of it is that they're curating things that you like, so you don't really care about it too much. However, with things like a car, like it was running hot a couple of months ago that the manufacturers of the Chinese cars, these Chinese cars are everywhere now in Australia, different brands, that they could be collecting data on you, that they could turn a car off at any point. How much of that is fact and how much of that is fiction?
So the ability to turn off a vehicle is not new technology. Back when I was an FBI agent, the company called OnStar had a lot of capabilities. Theoretically, you could flip on a microphone inside the vehicle and listen to a conversation. You could remotely start or stop a vehicle if you needed to, and we've seen that also in movies as well. Some of the vehicles, of course, have that kill switch capability. Imagine you're not paying your payments every month for a vehicle. Theoretically, again, a company can turn off that vehicle. When we're looking at auto drive vehicles, the future sci-fi is it just returns to the dealership automatically. So, there's a lot of
Wow.
capabilities here. The challenge is that so much of this data is not stored in Australia. What is collected often is offshored. So if you purchase a Chinese vehicle and it has an embedded SIM card in it, which most of the EVs do, that information is transmitted back to Singapore or a data center, but has the ability to be accessed by the manufacturer and or in this case the Chinese government.
Wow.
They're able to actually see that data because again the Chinese government kind of runs roughshod over a lot of the companies. In fact, BYD and Alibaba were just blacklisted by the Pentagon for supporting the military, but also for other reasons, including supply chain issues and the concern about data collection aggregation.
What would they use the information for from a government point of view?
Oh, imagine if I wanted to target a politician, if I were looking for indiscreet activities inside a vehicle, if I were looking for blackmailable or coercive information about an individual. What about if you ever decide to travel to anywhere under their purview? The potential for targeting, for obviously counterintelligence background, I'm thinking like a spy. I would use it to approach someone. Oh, you've got a white dog? I've got a white dog. That's amazing. What a coincidence. And that kind of ability to build rapport and approach someone or target someone. Or if you learn they have a special predilection towards a certain kind of alcohol or a certain kind of person, those are also targetable data sets that you could use. That's what obviously spies would want to have access to. And then, of course, for diaspora communities, the immigrant communities, putting pressure on them, using it for enforcement purposes, perhaps threats. You need to spy for us, or your family's going to be in danger. That type of coercive approach, which we've seen with the Chinese police stations set up around the world as a coercive platform. So there's some very real concerns there from a national security perspective.
I mean, especially given that, I think electric vehicles are becoming all the rage, even in government quarters now. I mean, I don't know the percentage that are Chinese made. I've seen a few government officials with Teslas, but I don't know about Chinese. But there's Chinese tech everywhere.
There is, and you probably heard like down in Canberra, the surveillance cameras were Chinese
Yeah.
manufactured, which is again of concern. I remember just a few years ago, I did a thing on nanny cams that were again Chinese manufacture, rebranded and sold in Australia. But again, how many of these devices are sandboxed and examined for backdoor access or remote code access? And that's a concern. Also, any routers, any switches, network devices, any cameras, anything literally that's manufactured in a foreign country, they don't go through an evaluation process typically to evaluate their safety and security and robustness.
So, I mean, how? I mean, that's Sorry, but you're just blowing my mind apart. I mean, nanny cams. I mean, come on. What would that be used for?
So there's a really nice application online called Shodan. And Shodan looks for Internet of Things devices that use the out-of-the-box username and password, usually admin or password, whatever. And it examines all these devices. So theoretically, anybody could use the device information to gain access. And there's enough vulnerabilities in a lot of these devices, IoT devices, that would allow an attacker to gain access, to listen in, to communicate, collect information, observe, and that's a real concern. If you go out on Shodan, you can see plenty of home security cameras, cameras inside of people's homes, web cameras, all sorts of things.
That is terrible. And there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, what do you do if you're a parent and that's what you want to obviously keep an eye on your kids? Are there specific things that you can buy that you're going to be protected from that the children are going to be protected from? What's an everyday consumer supposed to do?
Do your due diligence. Read any and all reviews of the product. Understand where the product is manufactured, who's manufacturing them. Read the directions. You know, as guys, we don't like to read directions. We just kind of plug things in and go for it. Change the username and password. If it's on your home network, make sure that, again, you change your password periodically, that you don't just use the out-of-the-box admin password that's provided. That's a big one. Be aware that it's there. I mean, imagine a stranger sitting in a chair in your child's room or somewhere in your home, and remember that that thing is there. Don't be complacent. Consider the conversations you have, consider exposure. Yes, they're extremely important to have from a security perspective, but just be aware that that's there.
So what do you do about the car situation? Just to backtrack, that's good advice for people who've got kids because, I mean, we use those all the time. What do you do about the car situation? You just play like Cold Chisel really loud from 6 a.m.
There's
until
that. I
11
prefer
p.m.
Journey,
at night.
but that's me. No, actually, what you do is make sure that you talk to the salesman. What exactly is this vehicle collecting? How is it collecting it? Where is the data stored once it's collected? With whom is this data shared? Go through that really long contract and the privacy explanation to understand what's going on. If you've already purchased a vehicle and you don't have that information, there's a really nice little website called vehicleprivacyreport.com. It has you put in your VIN number. It gives you the make and the model, and it'll tell you what data is actually collected. If you have the option to opt out, either through the purchase process or through your infotainment center or the handheld application, you can opt out through those so that the data is not actually collected. Australia is really good at managing the privacy data inside the country. The problem comes in when that data is offshore. And that's when you have to really be aware of where that data is going that's being collected.
Well, we've got a new reporter coming on board with the show, Drew Pavlo, who I think this is right up his alley. Let's see if they tell the truth when they're purchasing a car, because I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't be aware of that, and that's completely and utterly disturbing. And there are so many more coming into the country now. Now we are being inundated with it. So, I mean, maybe there needs to be some kind of government warning here.
There absolutely has to be, and as I'm sure that you've seen as well. Legislation almost never keeps up with technology. We're dealing with that with artificial intelligence right now. The technology is outpacing our ability to regulate how it's used. There's guidelines out often, but again, no controls. So in this case, again, offshoring of data would be one of the considerations, that the data has to stay sovereign within Australia would be a really good initial control. And then secondarily, who has access to it? They, in the agreements, typically will say they will share with our affiliates and partners. Oh, what does that mean? Who specifically? Taking control of our data. Again, Australia is moving in the right direction, allowing us to control our data. Who sees it? Who has access to it? And how it's used is really, really important.
So just to finish off with, because I mean, I only just got you on to talk about the cars, and you've completely and utterly betwixt me. So I need to digest all of this and get you back on, because I'm sure our viewers will have heaps of questions for you too. But there's nothing to stop at this point legislation or otherwise from our data going to some kind of other foreign country and them using that data in any kind of way?
So here's a really interesting thing that, as part of the research I was doing back when I was with Special Operations Command, came up with the concept of identity ecosystems. Where you live, you have an identity ecosystem. So all of your data that you generate while you're in that country. Well, what if you travel? What if you go to another country and you use a credit card or use your cell phone? You buy things, you rent a car, plane tickets, hotels. You now have a secondary identity ecosystem, which is not under the purview of Australia. The companies I mentioned, Experian, Axiom, InfoTrack, those are all American companies. They're not under Australia data privacy controls. So now you have a separate data ecosystem that exists in another country where you've traveled. And this is true for pretty much any country where you might be under surveillance, you might be under collection. Your cell phone has been imaged when you're going through passport border control, all that data. So now you're creating multiple identity ecosystems, each with its own profile. Very little, if any, requirement to get rid of that data. Oh, and by the way, you also have signals intelligence being collected upon you as a foreign national. Imagine the data set now that's being compiled along with any information that you've generated while you're there. So it's an issue. And this is something, again, that needs to be addressed. Clearview AI, as an example, an American company, was collecting Australian images by web scraping social media. They were told to stop and told to delete all their Australian images. Well, have they? And who has law enforcement or legislative control over that company?
Fascinating to talk with you. Dr. Dennis Desmond, you have no choice in this. You have to come back on our show because I have multiple questions across multiple different things. I'm just going to collect them all and see what else our viewers send into us. But really great to talk with you. Well, I thought it was great to talk with you. It's just shit to talk with you, but because the revelations are very disturbing to me. But I think knowledge is power, and you've got plenty of it. Appreciate you being on.
No, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Well, this has me fired up this week. During the week, former AFP Superintendent David Craig posted this.
I think Ben Roberts-Smith was set up, and this is how they did it. To prove the war crime of murder under Section 268 of the Criminal Code, you have to prove that someone is a non-combatant, an innocent person in the field. Now, there used to be a list of criteria that had to be met. Every single criteria had to be met to prove that that person was a non-combatant. Therefore, the person that killed them could be held accountable for murder. What happened in 2024, the Albanese government changed it to not all those criteria, but just one. So they changed it just to one element of this non-combatant list when they were investigating Ben Roberts-Smith for shooting, allegedly, a non-combatant.
Ben Roberts-Smith set up? I am shocked. The criteria of a war crime being changed to hold just one element that happens to apply to BRS during the exact time he was active. It sounds like targeted adjustment to me. As David explains, this retrospective shift drags BRS's service record right into the crosshairs of these new laws. And get this, the changes made only affect alleged war crimes of murder by soldiers, not ISIS brides. Are you kidding? It seems to me that we are perfectly comfortable putting a target on the backs of the men and women who fought for this country while giving a free pass to the ones who turned their backs on it. And just yesterday, I read that a lawyer for one of the ISIS brides now fronting court, who has returned from Syria, declared her client rejects extremism. But wasn't she arrested on charges of crimes against humanity and enslavement? Doesn't quite add up to me. What about you? And again, we're asking, who is being protected? It isn't hard-working Australians. We'll keep our eye on that story for you and the outcomes. And please keep sending your messages. I love knowing what you want us to talk about here on the show. I'm getting a lot about the budget, but a mum of three DMing me saying she has been investing in ETFs and shares to rely on during retirement. Her idea was to have funds that meant she didn't rely on the government. That had all been undone now. So all of her hard work is down the gurgler. Friday on the show, Special Forces veteran Heston Russell and political commentator Callista Clements are with me on the program. We'll break down how Labor is putting their attack schnauzers to work, focused on tearing down One Nation's policies. Heston will share his thoughts on the Ben Roberts-Smith alleged setup and the Senate tax inquiry that silenced its own critics. Tune in Friday at 5 p.m. We'll see you then.